President Trump says the visit went, quote, perfectly. My panel is back. Chuck Todd, this obviously, of course, the health of presidents becoming a perennial issue as our presidents seem to be older as they are serving in office.
Right.
This president about to turn 80 years old. This is something that Trump's doctors have, for the entirety of his time in public life, offered various descriptions with, different types of flowery language about just how well he's doing. But you can see some of, in the doctor's notes through 2025, one thing that they acknowledge in one of the notes is that there have been recent photos of the president that have shown minor bruising on the back of his hand. This is consistent with minor soft tissue irritation from frequent handshaking, the use of aspirin. This is, of course, something that the internet really has focused in on. Yeah. I mentioned only to say that these things have a way of kind of snowballing potentially out of control. And there have been so many questions about the president's health. Do you have any questions about the president's health?
I will just say this. I go with the same judgment that I had on the Biden presidency, which is you can't take what they're saying, but you just sort of watch what you see. And what I see with Donald Trump is not first-term Donald Trump. First-term Donald Trump traveled the country a lot. You saw him a lot. You don't see him a lot. He's definitely moving less. They're very careful. I think it hurts for him to walk because of his ankle issues. I don't know that, but I don't know if that's the reason, but he moves less. He's usually standing less often, usually seated more, things like this. Look, he has incredible medical care. In fact, if it wasn't for presidential medical care, he wouldn't be alive today. Because he got COVID at a time when other people, if they had gotten
I think you and I spent that entire day on the air together.
Yeah, I mean, he would have died as a civilian. He only was able to get the treatments that he needed because he was president when he was helicoptered to Walter Reed, when he was president of the United States. So, look, he's got all of the, this bruising. I don't know why they can't admit he's on a blood thinner, because this is it's obvious he's on a blood thinner. They've kind of said he's on a blood thinner when
they said aspirin.
Right, but it's more than aspirin. It's another blood thinner that gives you that kind of bruising. Anybody that has some family members that take blood thinner is very aware of it. Like it's a normal thing. It is, he is so vain. He doesn't want to admit some of these things. I actually think there's no harm in it. I think the way they treat this, because they hide it, makes you think, oh, what else are you hiding? So I think the way they've handled this is introduced more suspicion than what's in front of us.
First of all, we should have a system whereby people get to hear an independent report. A president has an exam, someone examines the president. If we're going to have 80-year-old presidents, we should know. We had problems the last administration. We have questions now. But I'm just trying to think, Kate, if Joe Biden regularly dozed at his own events, I think that the world would be excited. I mean, can you imagine that?
I can. In fact,
these things do raise questions, and
they do.
People have a right to ask them. We only have one president, and we ought to be able to have some confidence. I don't think we do right.
And this is a president who has a history of putting forth fabricated reports about his health. I mean, there was the first doctor's note from 2017.
That guy's dead, by the way.
That was
by the way, his first
Donald
doctor,
Trump is the healthiest ever.
Yeah.
You mentioned him getting COVID. They were not forthcoming about how severe the COVID was, and we really didn't learn about it until he was forced to be essentially medevac to Walter Reed. So this administration, Trump's team, has a history of not being forthcoming. I also think it's interesting, not to feed conspiracy theories, but it is interesting that he goes to Walter Reed and now he's going to Camp David, which is really like the one place a president can go and not have to be on camera. There are questions to be asked. They should be forthcoming.
I'm not saying anything. You're just asking questions.
I agree. Hey, if the president's going to do it, I'm going to do it.
I think this is a lot of fun. I think this is a lot of fun to hear. I've enjoyed all of this. It's been fantastic. Those press conferences are way too long. And if you have stayed awake for every single one of them, you've not watched them. They're way too long. So I can do all the dance you want about President Trump.
You ought to talk to someone about that.
But I can do all the dance you want about President Trump and his health. But what he has done in his whole adult life is overbrag about his physical prowess, right? And the only thing that's true about his physical prowess is he's a really good golfer. That is actually a truth. Even before the presidential deference on putts. But it's really rich. It's really rich with this discussion because we watched Biden. We watched Biden deteriorate. And so to over-respond to President Trump, who
I would argue
just
the
gave-
opposite.
who just gave
Patrick,
the longest State of the Union, if I may, who gave the longest State of the Union address, who is the same age that we've actually born in the same decade that most of our presidents have been, except for President Obama, in the last 40 years. It's an extraordinary thing, given the fact that he has eaten terribly.
Oh, yes.
And he is, we see all this stuff. So all this stuff, the easiest response for any Republican is, but Biden.
But that
and
doesn't-
having sat through negotiating with
that
Biden
doesn't
over
make-
debt ceiling in
But that doesn't-
2023,
I would argue that, just quickly,
I'm
David.
grateful that President Biden's team said yes to the debate early, so the American people could actually try to have a.
But
a
see, I would argue the
competitive election.
opposite. I think all of the focus on Biden only further necessitates focus on Trump. I'm not. I don't think anybody's
can we
sitting
just
here
say,
saying.
I mean, I worked in the White House, you worked in the White House, I worked right next to a president. I had a feeling for how hard that job is and how demanding that job is. So it's not really fun to say there are concerns when you have 80-year-olds in this office dealing with a 24/7 job, the most stressful job on the planet. And so having a text message from the president saying it went perfectly is not that reassuring.
And I agree.
I don't think any of these physicals for the last 30 years have been reassuring to anyone. I think all of this stuff requires some sort of check, and regardless of party.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
Regardless
I
of
think
age,
I'm with you.
David's
Let's
point on
do
this
it.
is
regardless
exactly
of age.
right.
I mean, every picture of the president at the beginning of and 4 years later and 8 years later is markedly different. So we see the stress before our eyes.
Yeah.
The three of us
And-
grew up during Reagan's presidency, and we saw, and I will say this, Reagan's White House put out their doctors. They would be at press conferences. When he was in Walter Reed getting surgery at the time, there would be, so there was a time we actually handled this not as partisans, but as sort of like, here's what the president's going through. And in some ways, hey, you know why you did the story? Because you were in the mainstream news media? Because there were other people going, hey, the president's just like
And
you.
let's
Well,
just
'cause there was
stipulate,
more
health
in- there was
problems.
also
let's
just
just
more
stipulate they
institutional
all
trust at that time.
age, but when you start in your mid-70s or late 70s, it's a more profound issue.
Yeah,
There
let's
should
have
be
age
independent-
limits.
there should be
Let's actually have age
All right,
limits.
There should be
I'm
independent
down for that
medical-
too.
It's also worth noting, to
Independent.
your point about what he eats, his own Health and Human Services Secretary, RFK Jr., citing his McDonald's candy and Diet Coke, says, quote, "I don't know how he's alive, but he is." So there's that.
But I don't know if I would take that guy's prescription medication every day either.
Coming up next in the